Hi, I'm Joe Lumiere. So, what can help us feel safer in the Trump era? I think it's an important question. Politics are much more about the deeper feelings and the inner emotional life we have. And I feel politics hide and really don't even do any justice to the true human story behind the real person. I think you can see this in the toll it's taken on friendships. Friendships, one of the greatest free things in life, are falling apart all over because of just politics. And this is politics about someone most people don't even really know, which uh, is ridiculous. Keep in mind, at one time, and I think this is very important, the country was known for having one of the most solid middle classes in history. For 60 years after World War II, we had just an incredible level of affluence and money that came into this country. People earned a good living without having incredible specialized knowledge, the same kind of knowledge that they have now. Even a mediocre job paid for things. And a strong middle class meant that the poor could strive for a level up, and the gap between rich and poor was much less, and there wasn't something as much, I think, referred to now as the uber rich in the same way that there is now. And I've noticed at times when there's a huge level of financial fear, the gap in politics also widens. Trump has done a great job in radicalizing the American male's dark side, because so many men feel unsafe in a world that is changing very quickly. For many women, Trump is proof that certain men get away with whatever they want. And that's a terrible feeling of lack of safety, especially if that feels symbolic of a past trauma. And by the same token, many people feel that Trump's "I'll do whatever I want" antics are his greatest attribute. And that makes them feel safe because they feel dismissed by a system that they don't even feel sees them. But I think we're all dealing with a world that is getting extremely complicated, technical, and insanely out of reach financially. And if you add up the house, the car, the medical insurance, the education for a job to get you there, it's certainly not the same country I grew up in, not by a long shot. And that makes more and more people feel unsafe about the future in droves every year as these basic things become much, much harder to obtain. And so I had a question that occurred to me. It's just a question to ponder. If you took the cost of rent, for instance, education, the cost of a car, medical insurance, is it all getting harder and harder to afford? Is that the easiest question? Or is there something else? Or are the basic things in life going crazy? And are they completely unaffordable? Because there is a difference. If things are just expensive, that's more pressure on us. If things are absurdly out of reach, maybe that's not our responsibility. Maybe that's something reaching a breaking point. And it needs to be thought of as a problem that requires getting yourself out of the way of something that's out of control. And I think that's the real problem everyone is facing. Even if we're certain the so-called other side is out to get us, the real problem is also we seem to be living in a world that's complicated and extremely expensive. And I think we've lost sight of that. And I think that's causing other problems because people feel unsafe. And that's what we have in common. A world that is radically changing with nothing but politics instead of a spiritual language for understanding each other. Imagine you said to yourself about people you don't know. Imagine you said this: I know you have a family too. This is towards people you don't know. I know you have a family. I know you have ambitions like me. You have a reasonable fear of the future like me in terms of money. You have a reasonable fear of leaving the planet if it's an untimely parting like me. You dream like I do. You think of what exists after this afterlife like me you do. And yet we don't refer to each other, to people we don't know, based on the rough things we've all endured growing up. because that would be like me, like most people, like us. Like most people have faced adversity. People are always surprised to find out that they have such powerful things in common with each other, spiritual events in common with each other. And my belief is you don't have to be surprised. I think it's easier to feel afraid. It's easier to politicize each other. When there was a future for a very strong middle class, it made the extremes of different viewpoints less revolutionary. Now that financial buffer is leaving and extreme politics are taking over. Politics allows people to dislike each other because when money is harder to get for the average person, our differences become a threat. When a way of life is hard work and difficult, the original pain of what people had to go through as a kid to survive shows up again. So if you had a belief that you faced a huge challenge as a kid and that the world is getting harder to flourish in, that's going to bring up that same pain you had earlier in life. And I say that with love and empathy. And when people get radically political and show a huge dislike to other groups, it's just easier to hate on others rather than dealing with your own pain and being free of that pain. I need to give credit to James Baldwin and the writer for that thought, but I think it's very true. So instead of having a shared way to talk about these problems, like the world changing, politics have pushed us further apart. And it's easy to build up shame and rage based on what we don't even know what's happening to us. Some presidents have been shamed into a feeling of inadequacy since they were little kids, and they're paying it forward to an entire nation. But deep down, people are navigated by truths in their souls. And feeling safer requires opening your heart, even when you feel afraid to do so. I see tarot cards as a world of symbols that show us what we have in common with each other. That includes all of the mysteries, all of the potential for a new source of encouragement to do something too. Do something that I think would be different than what's been going on now and how it's been going now. So what I wanted to do now was just ask a question on behalf of all of us. And I strongly feel that this question is as much for you as it is for me. So I have the question in mind. I'm going to switch to give you a view. And my question is, what cards can we see to remind us that we have our humanity in common during these times of intense problems and politics? What cards can we see to remind us that we have our humanity in common during these times of intense problems and politics? What cards can we see to remind us that we have our humanity together during these intense times of problems and politics? Well, I could do an hour-long dissertation, but when you look at the Chariot, you see things in black and white. So here, the two sphinxes below, we're moving forward in black and white. So that's it's very strongly the polarization that we all feel as a nation. When you look at the Hangman, you're looking at someone or something that is stuck. And when it's stuck, you're looking at being at an impasse where something has to change. That the world is upside down, literally. that we're up in the trees. Yeah, there is a source of radiant self-knowledge in this. It's not a sense of unconsciousness. And I think that that's very important, because people are learning dramatic things all throughout this process. And that's what the hangman points to. So is the country as the idea of a country stuck, or are we stuck as people inside a country? So I would say it's the latter rather than the former, because I believe that this is much more about people. And lastly, really where you look at the third card here is the sense of completion. Always the 10 is a sense of completion in tarot. And the symbol in being the Wheel of Fortune is that we go round and round in this world with an opportunity to visit every single side of polarization. So we're extremely polarized, but it's like the opposite of a circle is the other side of the circle. We go around and we come back to that other side. So the possibility to do that takes into consideration what that world feeling is in the sky, in the heavens. As you can see, all of the animal symbols that represent all of the different sides of Earth and humanity, and bring us to a place where we have to turn that wheel. And I think ultimately the message is you have to become, you have to be the wisdom you want the world to become. You have to be the wisdom you want the world to become. Thank you for being with me and sharing some thoughts with me. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you next time. I'm Joe Lumiere.